happy to welcome in college basketball insider Jon Rothstein, the absolute best newsbreaker in the world of college hoops. Jon, welcome to Kentucky Sports Radio. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be with you, man.
Jon, this is Shawn Smith of Go Big Blue Country. Thanks for joining us today. We started the show by talking about Davion Mintz's return to Kentucky and what that means. And you moved Kentucky up to number 12 in your updated rankings after that announcement. What do you think his return means to this Kentucky team?
Well, there's a steady hand, guys. The guys that can, shepherd people like Kellen Grady, guys like C.J. Frederick and Ty Washington, guys that haven't obviously been, in the Kentucky program, at a certain level and kind of teach them the ropes. Put Severe Wheeler in a different category because he's already led and run a team at the SEC level. But, I think the one thing that, we're seeing right now from Kentucky is putting a team together piece by piece. I think, there's been times where Kentucky has been collecting talent, but now with the advent of the transfer portal, things are a little bit different. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all shapes out.
Now, we've gotten to talk about the biggest transfer portal news of the offseason, probably the entire portal era. Kofi Cockburn withdraws his name from the draft while keeping his transfer options open. Just on the surface, what would his addition mean for any school in the nation? Not necessarily Kentucky, but just kind of anybody that could land a second-team All-American.
It completely transcends the ceiling for whoever lands Kofi Cockburn. I mean, especially when you think about what he can do, not just offensively, not just on the backboard, but what he can do defensively in terms of intimidating people to attack the rim. Now, here's what I'll say if you look at it from a Kentucky perspective. From what I have gathered over the past 3 or 4 days, I think Kentucky is likely going to obviously continue to explore the Jalen Duren situation. That's obviously something that's lingering. And from what I'm told from Jalen Duren's camp is he is not likely to make a proclamation on what he's going to do next season until after the Peach Jam in a couple of weeks. Now, here's another thing you have to look at. Kofi Cockburn and Oscar Tshiebwe are unlikely by most basketball people to be able to play together. So you might replicate some of the same that you have with Tshiebwe at the 5 spot if you bring Kofi Cockburn to Lexington. Now, that's not stopped John Calipari before. When you think back to that 2015 team, Karl Anthony Towns played on the same line as Willie Cauley-Stein, who were backed up by guys like Dakari Johnson and Marcus Lee. So I still think that obviously Kofi Cockburn is going to be obviously a major, major factor next year wherever he lands, but I think we're going to wait and see some other things materialize before we get a decision on that, from Kentucky's perspective. I also think, too, when you look at the dynamics of Kentucky's roster makeup, the shooting that John Calipari has added with Kellen Grady, with C.J. Frederick, with others is a perfect complement to whoever plays the 5 spot, whether it's Oscar Tshiebwe or Kofi Cockburn if he were to come to Lexington, because you guys know this as well as anybody. If you have consistent outside shooting from 3 spots on the floor, it's going to be much more difficult to double team the 5 spot. So I think the advent and the additions of the outside shooting of Kentucky that they added in the offseason will truly benefit who's ever playing the 5 next year.
John, if you put yourself in John Calipari's shoes right now, and you know that you have Kofi Cockburn, who has said that he wants to make a decision rather quickly, one would assume that he says he wants to take some visits, but you don't. It feels like this would be a decision that's more of the next week or two, as opposed to Jalen Duren, who is obviously going to make a decision after Peach Jam. We're still probably a month and a half away from that decision. It's kind of one of those one in the hand, 2 in the bush type deal. If you're John Calipari, do you take that risk initially, knowing the fit concerns with Kofi Cockburn, knowing kind of the ceiling that it might raise from an immediate standpoint, or do you take that risk and wait until a Jalen Duren final decision?
Look, I mean, when you're Kentucky, you're not recruiting, you're selecting. And I think when you look at the dynamics right now for this team, to me, as it's currently constructed, and you guys know this as well as I do, I think Kentucky is going to be a team that's going to compete at the top of the SEC. But because of the transfer portal, we have seen other teams like Kentucky restock their rosters with high-caliber transfers. Auburn has added Walker Kessler and a number of grad transfer guards. Mississippi State has added Rocket Watts, Shaquille Moore, DJ Jeffries, Garrison Brooks. Alabama's added Amari Burnett and a very underrated player from Furman by Noah Gurley. Arkansas has added, obviously, Chris Likes, Audis Tony, and Stanley Umude. And also LSU has recalibrated its whole roster with Xavier Pinson, a guy who started for Missouri last year, and Adam Miller, who started for Illinois, who is obviously a one seed in the NCAA tournament, as well as, a capable player from Cincinnati and Tari Eason. So to me, and you guys understand this, because it's Kentucky, you're always going to get more attention and there's always going to be a higher level of optimism. But the transfers I just mentioned make the other teams in the top half of the SEC very, very capable as scoring partners for Kentucky. So for me, for Kentucky to get separation from the rest of those teams, because right now 1 through 7, 1 through 8 is very, very close, I think landing either Coburn or Duren is imperative.
And, John, we all expect Kentucky to be one of the most improved teams in college basketball, especially when we're talking wins and losses, especially when they won 9 games a year ago. But what are maybe some of your concerns that you have with with this roster? They've addressed the shooting. They've added Oscar Tshiebwe, but is there one concern that you have?
Well, guys, I think that Kentucky has put together, a capable team with ball handling, with shooting, and the key word that I just referenced is team. This is not a team right now that reeks of NBA prospects like when it had De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, and Bam Adebayo, or the 2015 team that obviously went 38-1, or the team in 2016, for that matter, that had Jamal Murray, a lottery pick, playing in the backcourt with Tyler Ulis. So it's a team whose whole is truly going to have to be greater than the sum of its parts. But to me, like I said, if you look at the other rosters in the SEC and what they've done in the transfer portal, I mean, how would we talk about Mississippi State's recruiting class through the transfer portal with DJ Jeffries, who committed to Kentucky, with Garrison Brooks, who was the ACC preseason player of the year last year, and with Rocket Watts, who was starting at Michigan State, if those players committed to Kentucky instead of Michigan State? I think there's a couple of things that I think are in Kentucky's favor. One, they're older. 2, they've got more ball handling and better shooting. Those are obviously big coups. And I also think the schedule this year will be more suited for success than it was last year. And guys, I know it was a pandemic. I know there were no fans in Rupp Arena. But the way Kentucky's schedule was constructed last year, considering the lack of experience that this team had, was a very, very difficult hill for a young team to climb early. I mean, you're dealing in a situation where you don't have a normal off season because of COVID-19. You don't have a normal preseason because of COVID-19. There's no scrimmages. There's no exhibitions. And then Kentucky last year had obviously a warm-up game with Morehead State, and then plays Richmond, plays Kansas in the Championship Classic, goes into Atlanta, loses to Georgia Tech, then has Notre Dame and North Carolina in the CBS Sports Classic, and then they have to go to Louisville. That's what led to the 1-6 start, in my opinion, the brutality of that schedule. So I think the schedule alone will help Kentucky.
Absolutely. You moved Kentucky up to number 12 in your latest rankings. Talk to me about the difference between Kofi Coburn being added to that and Jalen Duren being added to that. Who would kind of push Kentucky higher up on your list, and just kind of how high do you think Kentucky could end up getting on your final rankings should they add either Kofi Coburn or Jalen Duren?
Kentucky, and I'd have to split the atom a little bit when I hang up with you guys, but Kentucky, if they can add one of those players, is definitely cracking the top 10 and, pushing the top 7 or 8. And, guys, this is just something that I've always believed, and I think you guys can understand it because, you cover the sport, so closely as well. I am an advocate of returning personnel in college basketball. It's how I structure my rankings. It's always what I've believed in. So I look at it and I look at teams at the top like Gonzaga, like UCLA, Villanova, Kansas, even Texas because they have Rainey and Andrew Jones back. Returning personnel always usurps incoming personnel, but make no mistake about it, if Kentucky lands one of those two players, Kofi Cockburn or Jalen Duren, they have separated themselves from a very competitive top half of the SEC, and they're the SEC favorite, and they're a team that will find a place without question in the top 10. I'm just an advocate of, again, player retention in college basketball. And, you could even look at a team, again, that's not, coming with maybe the sex appeal as a Kentucky or a Duke. But, Purdue's got everybody back from a team that was a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. You can't put a tag on what that means in terms of player retention.
And, John, let's talk about the guys that we do know are on the roster. So every offseason you call around and get phenomenal scoop on college rosters in terms of breakout players, potential surprises. So last year you called Isaiah Jackson, Emmanuel Quickly the year before. Are you ready to share who Kentucky's breakout star is this season?
Well, I am always somebody who, when I put out, my preseason content, you'll see this, I have impact transfers. I have impact freshmen. I also am going to have, guys who are breakout players, but I like breakout players to be somebody who was in the program the year before. For me, breakout players are not somebody who, average 10 points a game or more. But, if I was going to say something, I think that because of what we talked about with Kentucky having good shooting at 1, 2, and 3, and obviously they're going to have, a very sturdy presence at the 5 spot, I would expect, really the attention and the bold print on Keon Brooks to really, really be raised nationally because of his IQ and because of obviously what he can do at the power forward spot. And to me, guys, that's the guy that's going to make this whole thing go. Because if you at 1, 2, and 3 are going to have interchangeable pieces, good shooting, quality ball handling, you are going to have a scenario where you are going to need somebody who can pass, dribble, and shoot at the 4 spot to bring it all together. To me, that guy for Kentucky is Keon Brooks. And, you look at it like last year, some of the best games that Kentucky played was with him in the lineup. He had 15 points and 9 rebounds when Kentucky beats LSU. He had 12 and 6 when Kentucky beats Florida. And let's not remember that Kentucky didn't have Keon Brooks in the lineup, until January the 9th. If you look at it right now from a record perspective, there was 7 and 10 last year with Keon Brooks in the lineup. So there's 7 and 10 with Keon Brooks in the lineup, and, they're 2 and 6 without him. I think that says a lot.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to end it right here. What does Kentucky have to be? What does Kentucky have to do to be a national title contender at the end of the day, in your eyes?
Well, first of all, I know this is tough for your audience, but let's crawl before we can walk. Kentucky's a team that's coming off a 9-16 season, and with the exception of Keon Brooks, isn't returning somebody that was a key cog. So this is a team, and again, I use that affectionately when I talk about Davion Mintz, because Davion Mintz was probably put in a role last year that, wasn't a role where the team could have succeeded. He would probably have to do a little bit too much. But this is what I'm going to say. This team has not played collectively together in college basketball yet. Now, nobody is as good putting together a team on short notice as John Calipari, but the first time this team is going to see somebody else for real, it's going to be Duke, it's going to be Madison Square Garden, which is Cameron Indoor Stadium North, in the Champions Classic in Mike Krzyzewski's first game of the last season of his storied career. That is a big stage for that team to play on. So my obvious, advice is don't get too high or too low, but I think if you can add Cockburn or Jalen Duren, you've got a team that is the consensus favorite in the SEC. But as of right now, I've got the SEC 1 through 7 really, really close. And I also think Florida could be in that mix if we can see a healthy Keontae Johnson back for Florida. I obviously have not gotten any updates from Florida on Keontae Johnson yet. I wish hopefully the young man is healing well and he's ready to make a full recovery. I just hope that he's in good spirits and in good health. And I also think, guys, the team that nobody's talking about in the SEC is Kermit Davis' squad at Ole Miss. This will be his best team since he got to Oxford.
Wow. A lot of good stuff there, John. We really appreciate you. This was a lot of fun.
Guys, anytime. Thanks for having me, and have a great rest of the summer. Great talking hoops with you.